Welcome. This is Gutted. Loaves, fishes, and being more than the sum of your parts. I'm Dr. Stacy Markey, and today we continue our exploration of Season 2, Episode 2 of The Chosen. Its title, I Saw You. When we last saw Philip and Matthew had just confirmed that, yes, he did find wood, but it was wet. And Philip, who had been around for, 15 minutes, already had a job description. He's officially the guy who dries wood. Now, as they walk toward the ravine, Matthew turns to Philip and asks, did he learn to dry wood before or after he began following John the Baptizer? On the surface, it's a logistics question, but underneath, it's about formation and growth. Matthew has noticed how at ease Philip is with people. He's grounded, confident, kind without being patronizing. Matthew's trying to figure out if this is Philip's personality, who he's always been, or did something shift in him because of the time he spent following his rabbi? The answer is probably both. But beneath that curiosity is something more visceral, raw. Matthew is struggling. He still doesn't understand why Jesus chose him. Within the group, only a few fully accept him. Some barely tolerate him. The constant work it takes to decode social dynamics just to survive a conversation. It's exhausting. It makes sense that he wonders, maybe even hopes, that following Jesus might someday shape him into someone more confident and secure, someone a little more like Philip. But growth doesn't happen in a vacuum. Formation and change take shape in relationship. We're shaped, sometimes slowly, sometimes all at once, by the company we keep. Behavior, emotion, and even identity can begin to shift when we're exposed to someone who's steady and has consistent patterns. And Philip is exactly that kind of person. Anchored in love, settled in who he is, able to reshape a space just by standing in it. So, Matthew's curiosity is actually working on two levels. One, how might Philip's presence and steadiness shape him? And two, how will following Jesus shape him in ways he can't even begin to imagine? Philip doesn't answer the question about firewood. Instead, he redirects the conversation to something he thinks is more urgent, the tension he noticed between Matthew and Simon back at the campsite. He jumps right into the deep end. Dude, what's up with you and Simon? It's a direct question. No riddles, no metaphors, nothing for Matthew to decode. With that cognitive burden lifted, Matthew's emotional energy becomes more available. Energy can't be created or destroyed. It just gets redistributed. Philip's directness clears away some of the static so Matthew can focus on one thing, this conversation. He doesn't like me, Matthew says. He sees me as his enemy. Philip replies with a single word. Why? Matthew answers quickly, almost instinctively. I was a tax collector. Philip nods. Uh-huh. It's a simple, calm acknowledgement with no hint of judgment. Matthew, confused by Philip's lack of reaction, says, I was everyone's enemy. That doesn't shock you? Matthew doesn't pick up on the subtle shift in Philip's posture as he slides his hands behind his back, loosely clasping them together. Even if Matthew were someone who tracked body language, and he isn't, his attention is locked into the content of this conversation. Research shows that the kind of loose, open posture that Philip now holds often lines up with calm attention and low defensiveness. And that's exactly what Philip brings into the space. He isn't hiding a reaction or bracing for one. He's simply present. This is where the difference between a reaction and a response becomes evident. A reaction is quick and automatic. It's rooted in discomfort and tends to serve the person reacting more than the person they're reacting to. Reactions show up in a variety of different ways. Nervous reassurances, quick corrections, grimaces, flinches, anything to relieve the tension in the room, even if it's not helpful. And it almost always says more about the speaker's need to manage the moment than the situation itself. But a response? A response is different. It's slower, rooted in curiosity rather than fear. That is what Philip offers here. His response to Matthew's confession is profound. It's actually hard to do it justice without just quoting him. He says, I was something else once too, but once you've met the Messiah, am is all that matters. It's a paradigm shift, a reframing of identity. He pauses just long enough for his words to settle. Then a subtle intensity edges into his voice, the kind that suggests someone who has lived more life than he talks about. He tells Matthew, the next time Simon rides him, remind him that the people out there want to define us by our past, our sins. Unlike the other disciples whose backstories we know, Philip's past remains largely a mystery. What we do know is that he spent a couple of years in the wilderness with John the Baptizer, where food, water, and sleep were scarce, and where political and religious authorities posed a constant threat. A life like that teaches you to ration your vulnerability, protect what's tender, and to save the deeper parts of your story for people who have earned your trust. So when Matthew, genuinely confused, asks, out there where? Philip answers the way someone who has lived on the edge of society and safety often does. Cryptic, metaphorical, and really hard for Matthew to decode. He answers, with the sleepers. He pauses briefly before adding, but we're different. He leans in closer, like he's letting Matthew in on a secret, and says, we're awake. Matthew looks away, then shakes his head, finally saying, I don't understand. Philip, still entrenched in wilderness language, says, well, you haven't felt any relief except with him, have you? Your rabbi. Matthew thinks, no. And Philip responds, don't expect to. That's it. Matthew taps out. He's reached his limit for decoding word problems. He shifts to a different topic, one that has also been on his mind. How did Philip memorize prophecy? Philip doesn't miss a beat. In Hebrew school, like all Jewish boys. Why? Didn't he? Matthew nods. He started, but he skipped ahead. Of all the things Matthew has shared so far, this is what genuinely shocks Philip. Okay, what? Skipped ahead? He's never heard of someone skipping ahead. Why did they do that? Matthew explains the way he explains most things, like a reporter detached, merely reading the script placed before him. He was sent to apprentice under a bookkeeper. Philip laughs and then, with genuine affection, quips, was he that good with numbers or that bad at Torah? Something loosens inside Matthew. For once, the thing that has made him different isn't being used against him. With a small smirk and a hint of pride, he says he was proficient at both. Culturally, there's a phrase that floats around. Pride comes before a fall. It's loosely adapted from Proverbs, and it gets used anytime someone looks a little too pleased with themselves. But what Matthew is feeling here isn't that kind of pride. This is the healthy version, the kind that says it's okay to acknowledge what you're good at without inflating your worth or erasing your limits. It's simply telling the truth about yourself without apology. Philip, now fully drawn into the story, asks, how old was he when he skipped ahead? Philip is stunned a second time when Matthew answers 8. Enjoying this rare moment of self-acknowledgement, Matthew adds that he showed unusual promise. Philip, enjoying the moment with him, says, I bet you did. Philip's next question takes us deeper into Matthew's story. So why didn't he circle back to studying Torah? Jewish boys usually begin formal study around age 5 or 6, spending their early years memorizing large sections of Torah. Prophets like Ezekiel the one Philip quoted earlier at the campsite, didn't even enter the curriculum until around age 10. So if Matthew had skipped ahead as we think of it, that would suggest he mastered the Torah curriculum so quickly that he moved into prophetic texts early. But we know that's not the case. He doesn't know Torah or the prophets, which suggests that skipping ahead didn't mean accelerated learning. It meant removal from the formal Jewish learning process, which also tells us something important happened in the classroom. The most logical explanation is also the most human one. Matthew's mind simply processed faster than the system was built for. He probably corrected his rabbis one too many times, asked questions they couldn't answer, or held the material too literally. When a child doesn't fit the system often moves the child out instead of adapting itself. We don't know how long Matthew apprenticed or what worldview he absorbed. We don't even know if the bookkeeper was Jewish or Roman. But at some point, the apprenticeship led to something far more consequential. Matthew was paraded, not presented, not interviewed, paraded before a magistrate, like something to be bought. Rome saw a mind they could use. Then they made an offer that dwarfed the combined yearly income of his father and 3 of his uncles. All of this unfolded during a fragile developmental window. Between the ages of 8 and 13, when most children are working out identity, belonging, the rules of their community, and eventually the confusion and angst that accompanies puberty, Matthew was learning ledgers, tax structure, and what it meant to be valuable to the empire. Rome was throwing money at him, and at some point, his father kicked him out, telling him he no longer had a son. By 13, Matthew wasn't practicing recitation. He was buying a house, which raises several questions, mostly practical ones, because really, how exactly does a 13-year-old purchase property in 1st century Capernaum? Most likely with the assistance of the Roman Empire. But the emotional truth is more heartbreaking. Matthew didn't just skip ahead academically. He was pulled out, pushed forward, and then pushed out altogether. He didn't just miss Torah. He missed childhood. Philip doesn't dive into any of that. Instead, he says he doesn't blame Matthew's father for kicking him out. Matthew, having just revealed deep personal history and pain, withdraws a bit. But before the question even escapes his mouth, Philip explains. Matthew's father, his actions, they were rooted in the standards of men, in fear, pride, and social pressure. He explains that Everyone in Matthew's old life is now playing a different game than him. He understands that, right? Matthew struggles to take it in. Having reached his limit, he vents the frustration he's been carrying since childhood. Everyone speaks in riddles. He can understand complicated ideas. They're not beyond him. Philip snaps out of his wilderness language and recognizing that his time in the wilderness with John might have made him a bit obtuse. He unclasps his hands, reaching toward Matthew with a gesture meant to communicate connection, calmness. He says, "Of course not." He believes Matthew will likely understand the concepts faster than the rest of the group. He's speaking to Matthew's cognitive capacities. He's saying the ideas are simple. It's the people that are complicated. Philip's reassurance lands, but it does little to settle the storm. Matthew's body, already humming with agitation, is sending signals meant to communicate that something's wrong. His shoulders tighten. His body braces for impact. He shifts his weight from one foot to the other. It's the early rumble of the flight or fight wiring, the one that prepares us to survive long before it asks us to reflect. It's not that Philip said anything wrong. It's that Matthew's emotions are already running hot. He spent the entire walk juggling metaphors, confessions, childhood memories, and social dynamics that feel 3 steps ahead of him all the time. Struggling to verbalize his experience, he takes the axe he's been carrying and, drawing a circle in the dirt, labels it. It's the entire world, everything in it, and all the people that have ever been. Essentially, all of God's creation. He makes another mark in the dirt, this time outside of the circle. That's him. That's how he feels. It's not a dramatic gesture. It's honest. It's the quiet grief of someone who has spent years believing that, for reasons he can't quite name, he lives just beyond the edge of belonging. Philip nods, and with compassion and a hint of pride says, "Well said. Good for you." But he does more than just encourage. He takes a step of vulnerability with Matthew, telling him that he too has been living outside that very same circle for a couple of years with John, the outcast. He can relate. He lands a friendly punch to Matthew's shoulder, telling him he needs to stick around. He's going to be just fine. What an interesting phrase he chooses. Stick around. Not hang in there, but stick around. In that moment, Philip does more than just encourage Matthew. He steps toward him, continuing his vulnerability, something he doesn't do lightly. Life with John the Baptizer didn't come with guarantees. People came full of fire and conviction. Some stayed, but many drifted off when the wilderness asked more of them than they expected. Philip watched the hopeful arrive with big words and loud promises, only to disappear when things got hard or lonely or too exposed. Experiencing that leaves a mark. It teaches you not to assume anyone will stay. It teaches you to hold your story a little closer, your cards a little tighter, until a person proves they won't bolt when the temperature rises. So when Philip tells Matthew he understands what it feels like to be on the outside, he isn't speaking figuratively. He's naming a survival reality, one he's lived long enough to recognize in someone else. Join me next time when we see Nathaniel continue his struggle with both his faith and his sense of purpose. Philip teaches Matthew the secret skill of drying wood, and he finally delivers the message meant for Jesus' ears alone. Rama discovers the pain that comes with sleeping on the ground, and Mary decides that Rama needs to learn how to read. This is Gutted: Loaves, Fishes, and Being More Than the Sum of Your Parts.